All right, we'll go ahead and jump into it. So, welcome. This is our September user group for the Phoenix chapter of the Marketo user groups, or Adobe user groups, as they are now known. Just a couple of quick housekeeping slides that we'll go through. House rules. So, basically, this is supposed to be a safe place for everyone to learn, network, and like solve any problems that they're encountering with Marketo. Um, we're not doing any self promotion here, and that is not permitted. Also, do not contact other people outside of this user group without their consent. So, if somebody's like, "Hey, like we should connect on LinkedIn," and they put that in, feel free to do it, but don't just do it yourself. Also, if any use cases are shared here, don't share that information without any consent. So if somebody is talking about something specifically and it's confidential to this group, please don't go and share that with other people. This meeting is also being recorded, so just something to know. If you have any questions about that, you can email Emily, myself, or advocacy@adobe.com. This meeting will also be posted on YouTube after we're done. It's usually like within a couple days, it'll go on YouTube on the Mugs channel. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to Emily or myself about that, and we can kind of get you the link after this is over. Uh, this is just another opportunity to stay connected with our Phoenix chapter. So if you go to mugs.marketo.com/PhoenixMug, that's where we're at. You can also just find this if you just Google like Marketo user groups. You'll usually be able to find the different user groups that are coming up. And when we have events, you can find us. But once you have signed up for the Phoenix chapter, you'll get all of the notifications as we schedule more of these user groups. Some upcoming opportunities for the members. There's a Marketo and Mocha's on September 18th. You can see who's hosting it here. It's going to be about AI, and this is like as it's related to content for email designer. So how you can leverage AI when you're building out emails. So this is something you're interested in. There is a QR code on the screen. I can also put the registration in the chat if anyone is interested. Just let me know. But yeah, this is a cool opportunity if you're interested in learning more about AI and Marketo email designers. This is also because the email designer is new and was a recent feature that they rolled out. If you're utilizing it and you're having any problems or questions or trying to learn more about it, these are two different resources for you. So there's a course that is available on the right of the screen to learn more about how to use it. And if you want to learn more, you can go there. They're also doing biweekly office hours. So if you're having any issues with the email builder and want some more attention on that, you can go to one of those biweekly meetings. And so both of those QR codes are on the screen. So I'll leave them up for about 10 more seconds. And then again, yeah, if you have any questions or need any assistance on this, feel free to reach out to Emily or me. There's a new Marketo user group that is launched. It's for Foundation. So this is if you're new to Marketo and you're interested in learning just what it's about and how to leverage it. This is for you. So there's going to be 5 sessions between now and the end of 2025. So this will kind of really get you started. Today's topic is going to be a little bit more helpful too if you're a little newer to nurture specifically, maybe not just Marketo, but if you're just not leveraging nurtures a bunch, today will be super helpful for that. But they'll have a bunch of different sessions for anyone that's early in their Marketo journey. So that is a great user group and a great opportunity. And even if you just want a refresher of like how instances are getting set up from a basic standpoint, I think this would also be helpful for you. Okay, so the Experience Maker Awards are now live and submissions are open. So there's a few different categories that you can apply for. I think there's more information on the website if you're interested in that. So that's here as well. Also Adobe certified. Emily's certified. I'm certified. If you're interested in being certified, you can go to certification.adobe.com. And there's a bunch of different things you can do. And you can also now renew your certification for free. So that's something new that Adobe recently adapted, and it's been really cool. I just actually renewed mine recently, and it was super easy. Just a little recap. I'm Mikey. I'm one of the user group leaders here, and now we are joined by Emily. And this will be her first time with us, and we're so excited to have Emily. She's actually going to be presenting today. So very exciting. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. You are more than welcome to connect with us on LinkedIn. Send us a message over there. If you ever have any ideas for the user group or what you want to learn more about, feel free to tell us. and we'll try and make that happen. We're also going to look at an in-person user group potentially for the Phoenix group as well. So something to keep an eye on. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Emily.
Awesome. Thank you. So yeah, today the focus of this is going to overall be nurtures. So kind of how to build nurtures for your audience, but also scalable like Marketo architecture for you to hopefully save you a little bit of time and effort. You can go to the next slide. Cool. I think that for the most part, all of us know at a high level that nurtures are important. I think that they are one of Marketo's best features, but I think a lot of the time they kind of get put on the back burner, or people think I don't know how to structure this, I don't have enough content, etc. So today we're going to be focusing on that because, as you can see from this slide, nurtures are very effective both in helping sales, response rates, and qualified leads. The most common nurture problems, just to start off, at least from what I see, and if anybody has other ones, you can feel free to throw them in the chat. But I think some of the biggest nurture problems that we see are that they're outdated and messy. I'm sure that everybody has been given a Marketo instance or hopped into one where there's a dozen nurture tracks running. People are pinging you asking, hey, why is this person in here? They should be over here in this nurture. Or people are in multiple engagements at the same time. And this tends to happen a lot when they are older and people have just been building on top of what was already architected without maybe accounting for a change in strategy or audience. Over-engineered, so I don't think that a nurture needs to be complex necessarily to be effective. One-size-fits-all approach. We see a lot of generic messaging that doesn't really take into consideration where the buyer's at, any pain points that they have, or demographic information on their audience. Focusing on quantity and not quality. This has always been important, but especially with Gmail's newest unsubscribe feature where you can unsubscribe from all your subscriptions in one place. I think that the focus on pushing quality emails as well as like value to your audience is going to be more important than it was previously. And then lack of building trust and forming a relationship, which I will talk a lot about. And then the failure to progress and kind of forgetting the long-term goal of these nurtures. So I think we see a lot of nurtures where they were built for a one-off solution, like, hey, we need a nurture for the people who attended this event or something like really outdated, and nothing happens to them after they're exhausted from this nurture. It's kind of a weird user experience if you are getting nurtured and then out of nowhere it's just silence from the brand. You can go to the next slide if you'd like. So how do we combat this? This is the strategy and framework that I have been utilizing the most when it comes to building nurtures. And it's really the focus on aligning with the buyer where they are, as opposed to giving them content or talking to them as if they are where you want them to be. And we need to start meeting them where they are at. So in this graph is kind of the standard buyer journey. For the sake of this, we'll consolidate it into awareness, consideration, and decision, which I'm sure most of you know or have heard of, just for the simple purpose of like a nurture framework and where to start. I think that this is helpful for both if you don't have any nurtures and you're looking for where to start, or if you do have an outdated and messy instance and kind of need a revamp, it's a good starting point. So just as like a high level overview, awareness is when the person has recognized a problem or a need. So they're going to need general education, thought leadership, and kind of what you can bring to them. So really the focus here should be keeping your brand front and center for when your buyer is in market. You'll hear me say this a lot, but I really like to focus on relationship and trust building here. For example, I recently worked on a nurture where our whole awareness and welcome series was just tips and tricks and hacks that you could actually use, and it was genuinely just like free knowledge of like, here's what we do, go do this. And that worked really well and resonated well with people, because you are building a relationship. You're not pitching them anything. You're just like, hey, here's what you need and we're here. Consideration is when they start exploring possible solutions and weighing out their different approaches that they could take to the problem they have. So this is kind of when you want to start highlighting how you help. Case studies, differentiation, benefits. And then decision is when your audience is narrowing down and justifying their purchase. So the buyer will typically be super focused on ROI calculators if you have them, demos, trials, and things of that nature. Why this matters and why it's helpful. Obviously, meeting buyers where they're at. So people need different information at different stages of their journey, and we don't want to come off with like mistimed content or irrelevant content. Preventing mismatch messaging. It's not the greatest feeling or look when you maybe register for a webinar or have recently discovered a brand and they're immediately emailing you with request a demo, try our product. It can feel overwhelming, and it might be a little bit off-putting to your audience. I always say that you have to build like trust before you ask people for anything. And the easiest way that I also think about it is, I don't think any of us really like when you either don't know a brand very well or they cold email you and they're like, hey, do you have 5 minutes? Do you want a demo? Quick coffee and chat. And if you don't like it, your audience probably doesn't enjoy it either. And then on the opposite end of that, if you're sending like top of funnel content to somebody who is in a decision stage, this is also off-putting, because if somebody is at that stage with your business and your product, you should know that they're there. So it might give the feeling that you don't really know your audience or the person. Structure for measurement. When you are doing this, it's a lot easier to identify gaps in your journey. So if you do have these nurtures set up and we have excellent engagement in awareness, but low in consideration, it might tell us like we need a content revamp in middle of funnel. Alternatively, it kind of creates a roadmap for what content is like performing best and what we should be pushing more. I think a lot of people sometimes also get stuck on, when we talk about nurtures, and something I see with clients a lot is them saying like, I don't have enough content to do this. Once I get new content, I will launch these nurtures. So we've started doing a lot of content inventories lately. If anybody needs a spreadsheet for it, I have a really helpful one. But just doing like a website audit, and saying, okay, we have these on-demand webinars, these white papers, they're for this product line, or however you guys differentiate these content, you will discover a lot of content that you didn't even know that you had. And then it also makes nurturing more buyer-centric. So when we are using this framework, it's really focusing on how the buyer experiences the journey as opposed to internal definitions, like MQLs. And while these things are important, somebody might be an MQL in your eyes and from the scoring you've set up, but they're not necessarily there yet or ready. So we want to like nurture where they are and guide their journey as opposed to like forcing them through things. When we are looking at awareness, consideration, and decision, it can be difficult sometimes to know the exact stage that your audience is in if you don't have like some sort of intent data provider, like 6sense, for example. But you can use behavior to at least somewhat get close or get an idea of where people are in the buyer journey. So below these are just some behaviors to look out for to indicate where people might be at. Like we talked about on the other side, awareness. So if people are reading blogs, educational webinars, and infographics, so more content that kind of like confirms their problem, but isn't really heavily tied to a specific product or solution quite yet. They're likely in awareness, consideration, obviously any mid-funnel assets, solution briefs, case studies, and maybe starting to look into your solutions or your products page. Decision, obviously demo requests, trials, as we talked about, ROI calculators, and frequently hanging out on case studies and testimonials might be indicators of these different stages. One thing to note is it is important to keep the context of your organization in mind when you are considering these. Just as an example, like I work with a lot of B2B clients, specifically in software. They have really long sales cycles, like a 1-year sales cycle. The contract, once they sign, is going to be 3 years. Most of the time we know that they're locked into a contract with a competitor for another year. So you're talking to these people years before they might actually buy from you. So them hanging out on your case studies or solution briefs doesn't always indicate consideration because they're not even close to being there yet. So this outline is more of a general framework, but it is very important to keep the context of your organization in mind when you are looking at these behavioral indicators. And then measuring the impact of nurtures. So I think that there is a lot of conversation around this. I typically simplify nurtures into two main things. Your top of funnel results and your bottom of funnel results. So top of funnel, like I said, is keeping your brand like at the front of mind and just building the trust and relationship. I know I've said that a lot, but I obviously value it a lot. I like to think of it as like if you are a product in a grocery store, you might not get bought today or somebody's like not in the market for buying cereal. But when you go back to the store and I am ready to buy cereal or I need it, Lucky Charms is always at eye level. They like strategically place their boxes there. So just being front of mind. And then obviously bottom of funnel, you're just trying to help sales accelerate deal cycles, improve like closed won. And then how to measure that. So these three are specifically a little bit more applicable to B2C just because these are easier metrics. I will dive into B2B metrics on the next slide, but if you are in B2C, a control group is probably the easiest way to go. So if you just take your not nurtured group versus nurtured, and it does not always have to be 50%. Most people don't intentionally not nurture 50% of their audience. It can be 10, 5, 15, as long as you have enough volume to like prove significance. And then just measure the lift, the difference in whatever outcome your organization wants to see between your control group who is not nurtured and the people who were. Again, B2B makes this a little bit tough. So I've seen a lot of teams use historical benchmarks to measure this. If they launched a new nurture this year, this quarter, we'll use year over year, like quarter over quarter data to do this. Bottom of funnel metrics that you should see when nurturing correctly is your time to close should improve and your win rate should increase. And then another way to measure top of funnel metrics if you're in B2C is basically the percent of in-market or people who are available to buy a product that either requested a demo, maybe moved down your funnel or whatever, again, the outcome of your organization is desired to be. So you would basically take the number of however many took the action you wanted, divided by the total in-market buyers. The reason I say this is easier if you are a B2C company is it's a lot easier to find your number of in-market people because there's consumer research providers that will give this to you. It's a little bit more difficult to figure out if you are B2B. And then if you are in B2B, these are some things that I typically look for with clients when we're launching new nurtures. Pipeline influence. So basically the percent of your pipeline that was touched by your nurtures and where they are. So even if people are saying, oh, well, like these people from the nurture are not even closed 1? How many open opportunities started with or interacted with your nurture? And where are they versus people who did not interact with your nurture or get nurtured? You can pull reporting for ACV and AOV. Do customers that you nurtured spend more once they do close? Do they purchase more frequently? If you can get a little bit creative with Salesforce reporting, you can normally tie the campaign influence to these opportunities. And then brand awareness and overall engagement. So this one, again, I think that there is different ways of viewing it and opinions. Brand awareness is not always like able to be measured right away, and sometimes not at all, but it is one of the most important pieces, like being top of mind to potential customers. So yeah, you could look at shared links, mentions of your brand, organic search traffic through Google Analytics, G2, etc. You can also look at how many more touch points are being generated from your nurtures. Like, did people actually register or download this from our nurtures? All are very important. So there are like a couple ways that you can still prove that your nurtures are providing value and resonating with your audience. And I think too, another thing that sometimes people get stuck on when it does come to nurturing is they don't know how to report on it. The opens and clicks aren't good enough. So they just kind of, again, put it on the back burner. But I think my best advice would be to just like measure what you can. As you have more volume, more data, the reports will start to come together and you can pull more in-depth reports. But a nurture can only run it can only work if it actually runs. So build it, and then if you don't have reporting already, you can build it as you go, as people request like different reports. Hey, is this driving XYZ? And you can go from there. Cool. And then moving on from the strategy and kind of how to structure it from the buyer, I want to talk a little bit about the architecture that I normally use. So again, whether you are starting out and you don't have any nurture programs because you have a fresh Marketo instance, or you got a Marketo instance and the nurtures are a mess, I have implemented this from scratch, and I have also retired old nurtures and moved everything into one of these control programs. So it does work both ways. So just as a quick overview, I structure all of my nurtures with a default program as the control program. This kind of eliminates the need for having a complex add to program in every nurture. It also like gives you one space where you can see all of your target lists. It's easily adjustable. But because it uses like a choice step, which I'll get into, you don't have to worry about people accidentally making it into multiple nurtures at one time. The engagement programs are still going to be responsible for stream routing if you use it. But for the sake of this default control program, I would recommend creating 3 fields. They're all string fields, but a current nurture status, current nurture, and nurture log. I'll get into how you stamp those and what they do in a second. But again, overall, you have more centralized control. It is easier to add new programs when you build them or get rid of old ones. And then you just have a little bit better visibility into nurture journeys when you use the nurture log, which I'll explain how to do. You can go to the next slide if you want. All right. How it works. So sorry, let me actually also pull up the presentation so I can look at the first slide really quick. Okay. So the O1 initial current nurture assignment, this is just going to look at your eligibility. So we here are checking, like the smart list is normally if nurture eligible is true. So you're subscribed, you're not invalid, email address isn't empty, and whatever other filters your organization deems to be marketable. And all it does is make sure they're eligible, and then it will execute on the assigned current nurture. The screenshots here are kind of how to structure the assignment. The smart list that you saw in the first screenshot are just choice steps saying if a person's in this, stamp their current nurture as awareness, consideration, decision, or whatever your nurtures are. And again, this eliminates people being in multiple, because once they hit choice 1, they are done with this step. They will not go on to choice 2, even if they appear in multiple smart lists. So it's also important to order this in the order of priority in case you feel like you might have conflicting logic or people are making it into more than one smart list. All I do after that is just stamp their current nurture status as normal. The options that I use for this are normally paused, do not nurture, and normal. That's it. So stamp their current nurture that they should be in, turn them to normal. And then you can see in the second screenshot, this is the smart campaign inside of the engagement program that captures them. So once that data value changes, if they're not already a member and their nurture log doesn't say nurture XYZ, then they get added to the program, and that's it. When somebody exhausts a nurture or needs to be switched, the O2 switch nurture campaign picks them up. So once their current nurture status, the data value changes to exhausted, and they are still nurture eligible, as you can see in the first screenshot, all we do is re-execute the assign current nurture campaign. So that will always handle the nurtures. So there is only one campaign that is assigning people to however many nurtures that you have. And then once somebody becomes exhausted, we just stamp their nurture log. If it's empty, I put the one they just finished. If they've already been in nurtures, you can see as the default choice, I just add on so that you can always have a history tracking of what nurtures they've been a part of. And then you can always feel free to add in other campaigns like pause or set do not nurture. So if like somebody becomes a competitor, we would maybe change their current nurture status to do not nurture. All of those, like the pause and do not nurture, are kind of up to your organization, but you can obviously add those into your control program. And then personalization. This is another thing that sometimes I think, myself included, you have this idea that you don't know where you want to start with it, or that you don't have enough to go off of. However, especially in today's marketing world with so many marketing touches from every company, personalization is super, super important. One, I will always tie it back to building a relationship and making your audience feel like you know them, but also people expect it. So it is really important to at least start working toward, because it is a consumer expectation at this point. So personalization and dynamic content, I mean, specifically as it relates to nurtures, obviously there's going to be a higher engagement level. When you talk to people about things that they care about or they're interested in, they are just more responsive. If I'm supposed to know a lot about you and I come up to you and start talking about something that you absolutely do not care about, you're probably not going to really want to continue the conversation. And the same thing does apply to when you're speaking to your audience. It helps you with efficiency. So if you have good segmentation and you can do dynamic content well, one nurture can serve multiple audiences, as opposed to having, like, for example, I've seen instances where somebody has a CMO nurture, a VP nurture, an end user nurture. So having good segmentation can really save you a lot of time as well. And then reducing manual work and one-off campaign building. Just one small example that I can think of here with this is I am currently working through a nurture, and we have decided to add in a snippet at the bottom of the nurtures where we always update it with upcoming events, recent like white paper releases, etc. Basically just a related content section, but it is a snippet so that we can change it out monthly. And then it changes through all of the nurtures that we have it in. So it reduces like our need to go create an email send to just promote the new release of a white paper. And it also obviously would give your audience less inbox fatigue. They're just seeing it in one email as opposed to you sending them one nurture, a webinar invite, and also the release of their newest blog. Why use it? Like I said, buyers do expect personalized experiences, makes for a better user experience, can maximize the value of the existing content you have. And then, of course, people need different information. One thing that I've been doing recently, and I think about a lot when it comes to the structure that I talked about earlier with awareness, consideration, and decision. Although me and my C-suite and like my CEO and everybody might all be in awareness because we just learned about a product, we don't care about the same things. Like as an end user, I care about how you're going to make my life easier, my clients' instances cleaner, and kind of what you can do for me. And I don't really care about how you're going to help us get more closed won deals, drive revenue. But on the flip side, my CEO does care about those things, and he does not care how your product helps Marketo users because he's not in there very often. So even segmenting the buyer group is very helpful because even if everybody's in the market for your product, it's not for the same reasons. So to start using personalization, I will always begin with simple segmentation rules. If you stamp industry, buyer group, product interest, all of those things can be a helpful starting point because even if you think it's small, some segmentation is better than not at all. And it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be whole emails with different designs, linking to different places. You can start with subject lines and CTAs, different header images. And then as you kind of move on, you can graduate to like behavioral segmentation. Just as a high level example, if somebody visits a pricing page X amount of times, we might move them to our consideration segmentation. And there's a lot that you can do with it, but I would really encourage everybody to start using it, even if you think it's on a small scale or you don't know where to go with it. I would just start because as you build it and see more options, it's super helpful in terms of like building great segmentations that can help you and your audience. Cool. That is all I have for today. Does anybody have any questions, comments, anything?
I'll start by saying thank you. That was so great. Great refresher on nurtures. Really appreciated it. Lots of things I haven't thought about before. The idea of a snippet is so fun because it does allow you to do more personalization, which, because I feel like there's all kinds of things come up when you're working with different content people as it relates to nurtures where they're always like, oh, but I want to do this instead. So really love that idea. Love the controller. Just so many helpful tips. We'll give another like minute or two for questions, and if nobody has any, we can end early. That is true, yeah, like the new email editor and snippets, that's something I did think about as well. I don't know like how many people are using the new email editor. I know it's really popular and Marketo's really um, pushing it, which is good. I personally still like the old email editor just because we created a custom template and have a lot of things. Um, yeah, dynamic content too. So many different things. That's probably a good thing to bring up, though. I'm sure that they're looking at trying to get ways to do some of this stuff. But yeah, if there's no other questions, yeah, maybe that's something we can brainstorm I don't know when the old email editor will be sunset. I've asked that question a few times myself. I think that at least for this year, I know it'll still be around, and hopefully for longer. So I don't know for sure when they're going to do that, but I know that I love the old email editor.
As far as I know, they don't have a specific date yet that they're sunsetting the old one. I, to your point, Kay, I don't think that it will be until there is at least some of these things resolved, like snippets and dynamic content. So I think that we have time, but they have not given a specific date. Can we have another nurture session where you show us how to create from start to end? Do you want to see like the program build from start to end and like the traffic controller? Yeah, I think we can do that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea for a future one. So this was more of an overview. Maybe we can do a little bit of more of a deep dive next time.
Yeah, we can definitely do an architecture session for the next one. And if you have anything else that you would like to see built, feel free to let us know and we can do a session on it.
Awesome. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap there. Thank you so much for everyone joining. I think we have some interactive webinar sessions from some of the other user groups, Kay. Maybe if you want to add me on LinkedIn, I can show you where some of that stuff's at, and maybe can provide some resources that might help with that as well. But all right, well, thank you everybody for joining, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you.